I thought my marriage to Stacy was solid, you know? I mean, we had our ups and downs like anyone else, but I never imagined she'd pull something like this. Turns out, she wasn't just stepping out on me, she was doing it with a divorce lawyer named Kyle. I guess that's the ultimate cliché, huh? I found out about the affair by accident. It wasn't like I went snooping, but Stacy had become distant over the past year. She started going out more, always with the same lame excuses about needing time for herself. I didn't push her because I didn't want to be that controlling husband, but something wasn't adding up. One evening, she got careless. Her phone buzzed while she was in the shower, and I glanced over at it. The text preview showed, "Can't wait to see you again, babe. Last night was amazing." From Kyle. It felt like my heart stopped. I just stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. When Stacy came out of the bathroom, I confronted her. I wasn't prepared for what came next. She didn't deny it. No, Stacy admitted everything. With this smug look on her face, she told me she'd been seeing Kyle for over a year. A whole damn year. She didn't even seem sorry. What she said next still makes my blood boil. "I love you both," she said, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "I'm not going to choose, Timothy. I need both of you in my life." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife was telling me to accept the fact that she was in love with another man and had no intention of stopping the affair. And if I didn't like it? She said she'd divorce me, and use Kyle as her lawyer. I didn't react right away. I just stood there, numb, while she looked at me like I was supposed to agree with this insanity. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just hurt, I was angry. After Stacy dropped that bombshell, I didn't know what to do at first. The shock of hearing her say she loved us both was like a punch to the gut. And the way she said it, so casual, like I was just supposed to accept it and move on, made my blood boil. I wanted to yell, to throw her out of the house, but I held it in. I wasn't going to let her see how much she'd gotten to me. Instead, I got in the car and drove. No destination, just miles of empty road to clear my head. It felt like everything I knew about my life had been flipped upside down. My wife was sleeping with some scumbag divorce lawyer for over a year, and she didn't even have the decency to hide it anymore. She didn't care. She thought I'd either go along with it or she'd just leave, taking the kids and half of everything with her. And worse, she said she'd use Kyle as her divorce lawyer if I didn't cooperate. I couldn't let that happen. I realized, then I had to be smart about this. Stacy expected me to lash out, make a scene, but that's exactly what I couldn't do. If I wanted to come out of this with any chance of keeping my kids, I needed a plan. I wasn't going to be some clueless husband she could walk all over. The next day, I took my first step. I went to the bank and canceled our joint accounts. If she was going to play dirty, I wasn't about to let her drain everything we had. From there, I decided I needed more than just a financial move. I needed proof, something I could use to protect myself. I ordered a GPS tracker and a voice recorder online. If she was sneaking off with Kyle, I'd know exactly when and where, and I'd have the conversations to back it up. When the tracker and recorder came in the mail, I waited for Stacy to leave. She headed out like she always did, claiming she had some errands to run, but I knew better. I installed the GPS under her car's dashboard and slipped the voice recorder into the glove compartment. She wouldn't even notice it. Now, every time she got in that car, I'd know where she was going, and I'd hear what she was saying. I wasn't just going to catch her in the act, I was going to gather every piece of evidence I needed to protect myself in court. If she thought I was just going to let this go, she was dead wrong. For now, I played it cool. Stacy had no idea what I was up to. She kept going on about her day, like everything was normal, while I waited. Let her think she was in control. I was playing the long game, and when the time came, I'd be ready. With the tracker and voice recorder in place, I felt like I had some control back. For the first time since Stacy admitted the affair, I wasn't just sitting there helpless. Now I had a plan, and I was going to wait for the right moment to strike. It was all about patience. I wasn't going to let her or Kyle see me coming. At first, it was hard. Every time she left the house, knowing she was probably going to see him, my stomach would churn. But instead of confronting her, I focused on gathering evidence. I checked the GPS tracker religiously. Sure enough, every few days, she'd drive to the same address, Kyle's house. It was all there, right in front of me, like clockwork. The voice recorder? That was trickier. I couldn't listen live, so I'd wait until she was asleep or out of the house, and then I'd go retrieve it from the glove compartment. The first time I played it back, hearing their voices made my blood boil. They were laughing, talking about me like I was some obstacle in their perfect little world. Stacy had no remorse, no second thoughts. She was all in with Kyle, and she didn't care how much she was destroying our family. I kept gathering more recordings, each one more infuriating than the last. They'd talk about their future, what life would be like after Stacy divorced me. Kyle, being a smug prick, would even joke about how easy it would be to take me down in court. He didn't know I was onto them. He thought he had it all figured out. It wasn't just talk either. They'd make plans right there in her car, arranging hotel meetups, laughing about how clueless I was. It made me sick to hear it, but at the same time, it was exactly what I needed. Every recording was more ammo for me, more leverage. But I kept quiet. At home, I played the role of the oblivious husband, acting like everything was fine, even though inside I was raging. Stacy seemed to think I'd accepted it, that I was just going along with her little arrangement. She'd smile at me, make small talk, and leave to run errands. I'd smile back, knowing exactly where she was headed, knowing every word she said to Kyle was being recorded. It was torture, but I knew I had to wait. I needed to be patient. If I played my cards right, I'd have enough evidence to blow their little fantasy apart, not just in court but in every way that mattered. Stacy had no idea that while she was off playing house with Kyle, I was building a case against her. Weeks went by like this, and each day I got stronger, more focused. I wasn't the broken man she thought I was. I was preparing for war. Weeks of watching and waiting built up inside me. Each time Stacy left, I knew where she was going, who she was with, and what they were talking about, but I kept playing dumb. The recordings were getting worse. Kyle would talk about how easy it'd be to rip me apart in court, how he'd make sure Stacy got everything, even the kids. They laughed like I was just some joke, someone they could trample over without a second thought. The anger was growing every day. I was doing everything I could to hold it together, but inside, I was boiling. I couldn't stand hearing his voice anymore, couldn't stand how casually they talked about breaking up my family. But I knew I needed more, just a little longer, and I'd have enough to destroy them both. So I kept it all bottled up, waiting for the right moment. Then came the day that pushed me over the edge. Stacy had been out most of the day, and the tracker showed she was parked at Kyle's house, as usual. When she got home, she acted normal, like she always did. But I could feel the tension. Maybe she sensed something had shifted, because she didn't smile as easily that night. Later, after she went to bed, I grabbed the voice recorder. I sat in the kitchen, playing it back, and that's when I heard it. Kyle had asked her, "So, when are you going to tell him? You can't keep this up forever." Stacy laughed. "He's too weak. He'll cave. I just need him to get used to the idea. Once I file for divorce, it'll be over. He'll roll over like always." That was it. That was the moment. I could feel something snap inside me. She thought I'd roll over? She thought I'd just let her walk away with my kids, my life, and everything I'd worked for? No. No way in hell. The next morning, I decided I was done waiting. If Kyle wanted a war, I'd bring it straight to his doorstep. I'd gathered enough evidence to take him down in court, but I needed him to understand that this wasn't just about legal games. This was personal. I knew where he lived, thanks to the tracker, and that afternoon, I drove straight to his house. No warning, no heads up. Just pure, cold determination. I wasn't thinking clearly, but I didn't care anymore. I needed him to feel what I was feeling. I pulled up outside his fancy house, the one he was so proud of, and marched straight to the door. I didn't knock, I pounded on it. He opened it with this smug look on his face, like he was ready to mock me again. But he didn't get the chance. Without thinking, I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him back inside, slamming him against the wall. His eyes went wide. He didn't expect me to fight back. "Stay away from my wife," I growled, my face inches from his. He stammered, trying to act tough, but I wasn't having any of it. I hit him. Hard. Once, twice, until he was on the ground. I didn't care if I got in trouble for it. I needed him to know I wasn't some pushover he could walk all over. By the time I left, Kyle was on the floor, clutching his side, gasping for breath. I didn't stick around to see if he got up. I'd made my point. Now it was time to finish the real fight in court. When I got back home, I felt this strange sense of calm. It wasn't over yet, but I'd sent a message. And now? Now it was time to take the next step, filing for divorce before Stacy could blindside me. I was going to get full custody of the kids, take back control, and make sure Stacy and Kyle paid for everything. They thought they could crush me. They had no idea what was coming. After the confrontation with Kyle, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The time had come to take control. I had the GPS logs, the recordings, all the evidence of Stacy's affair, and now it was time to use it. The next morning, I met with Donna, my lawyer. She didn't waste time sugarcoating things. "We're filing first," she said, laying out the plan. "Full custody of the kids, division of assets, and using the affair as leverage. Kyle's not going to know what hit him, and neither will Stacy." Hearing her talk like that gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. For the first time, I was on the offensive. No more waiting for Stacy to make the next move. We filed the divorce papers that same day, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down for her. That evening, Stacy came home like it was any other day. She had no clue what was waiting for her. She didn't suspect a thing, still thinking she had me where she wanted. It wasn't until the next morning, when she was served the divorce papers, that the reality hit her. She walked into the kitchen, her face pale, holding the papers like she couldn't believe it. "You filed for divorce?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone steady. "You didn't think I'd sit around and do nothing, did you?" For a moment, she was stunned. Then, she tried to pull herself together. "We could have worked something out, Timothy. You didn't have to do this." I couldn't help but laugh at how delusional she sounded. "Worked something out? Stacy, you've been seeing Kyle for over a year. You think I'm just going to let that slide?" I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out her next move. But what she didn't know was that I had all the proof I needed. I hadn't even shown her the recordings yet. That was my trump card. "I'm going for full custody," I said, watching her face change. She wasn't expecting that. "You're not taking my kids from me," she snapped, trying to regain control, but I didn't engage. I didn't have to. I left her standing there, clutching those divorce papers, fuming. She thought she had all the power, but now the tables had turned. The real battle was just beginning, and I was ready. That night, for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of calm. The fight was far from over, but I'd made the first move, and it felt damn good. Once Stacy was served, the shift in her attitude was instant. She went from confident to scrambling, trying to figure out how she'd lost control so quickly. For a few days, she tried to act like we could still talk things through, but I wasn't buying it. She wasn't going to charm her way out of this. I was already working with Donna, building the case. The recordings were the key, proof of her affair and Kyle's involvement. With those, there was no way she'd get full custody. Stacy was about to learn just how serious I was. One afternoon, Stacy decided to sit me down, acting like she could still negotiate. "We need to talk about the kids," she said, trying to sound reasonable. "I think we can figure out custody together." I couldn't help but laugh inside. "You think you're in a position to talk about what's best for the kids?" I said, my voice calm but sharp. "You've been sneaking around with Kyle for over a year." She looked stunned for a second, like she hadn't expected me to bring it up so directly. But I was done pretending. "I'm filing for full custody," I continued. "And I have enough evidence to make sure you don't walk away with anything more than visitation." She paled, her confidence slipping. "What evidence?" she asked, trying to stay calm, but I could hear the panic creeping in. "That's something you'll see in court," I said, keeping it vague on purpose. I wasn't going to reveal the recordings yet. Her frustration showed as she muttered, "You're really going to make this ugly." I didn't flinch. "You made this ugly, Stacy, the moment you brought Kyle into our marriage." After that, she stopped trying to talk her way out of it. The house got quieter. She knew the fight was on, and that I wasn't going to back down. A few days later, I heard that Kyle had tried to send me a message through a mutual acquaintance, wanting to talk things over. I almost laughed. This guy, who thought he could wreck my life, wanted to talk now? I ignored it. The next time I'd see Kyle, it'd be in court, and he'd finally realize just how badly he'd underestimated me. Meanwhile, Stacy grew more withdrawn, avoiding me, avoiding the inevitable. I kept things as normal as I could for the kids. They didn't need to know how ugly things were getting behind the scenes, but one thing was clear: this wasn't going to end well for Stacy or Kyle. They were about to lose everything. With the divorce papers filed and the evidence piling up, everything felt like it was moving fast. Stacy had gone from trying to play nice to avoiding me completely. She knew what was coming, and she wasn't ready for it. I could feel the tension every time we crossed paths in the house. Short, awkward exchanges, barely any eye contact. It was like she was walking on eggshells, trying to figure out what I had planned next. But I didn't stop there. Donna and I kept pushing forward, preparing for the upcoming court battle. I handed over everything: GPS logs, the voice recordings, all the little details of her affair with Kyle. The more Donna looked at the evidence, the more confident she became. "This is rock solid," she told me one day, flipping through her notes. "There's no way they're going to win this custody fight. Stacy doesn't stand a chance with what we've got." I knew she was right, but hearing it from Donna gave me a sense of relief. It was one thing to think I had the upper hand, but knowing my lawyer was ready to tear their case apart? That was the reassurance I needed. Still, things weren't completely calm. A few days after I heard Kyle had tried to reach out, Stacy made her move. She came to me late one night, after the kids were asleep. I could tell by the way she lingered in the doorway that she had something on her mind. "We need to talk," she said, her voice quiet but firm. I gestured for her to sit, though I already knew what was coming. "I don't want this to get messy," she started, trying to sound reasonable, but her nervousness was obvious. "For the kids' sake. Can't we just figure something out?" I leaned back, watching her carefully. "Figure something out?" I repeated. "You mean like you and Kyle figured out how to break up our family?" She winced at that. "Timothy, I never wanted it to get like this." "But it did," I cut her off. "And now, I'm going for full custody. That's not negotiable." She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "You can't just take the kids from me," she said, her voice rising a little. "I'm still their mother." "I'm not trying to take them from you, Stacy," I said, staying calm. "But I'm not letting you make decisions for them while you're off with Kyle. I've got enough proof to make sure the court sees what you've been doing." Her face went pale again, just like the day she was served. "What proof?" she whispered, her voice barely holding steady. I leaned in slightly. "That's something we'll go over in court," I said, keeping it short. She didn't need to know about the recordings yet, not until the time was right. She sat there for a moment, silent, like she was calculating her next move. But I could see the fear in her eyes. She didn't have the upper hand anymore. She stood up without saying another word, leaving me alone in the room. I could feel the weight of the silence after she left, but I didn't feel sorry for her. She made this bed, and now she was lying in it. The next day, Donna called with some good news. "We've got a court date," she said, and just like that, the storm I'd been waiting for was finally here. Stacy and Kyle thought they could walk all over me, but they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Once Donna told me we had a court date, everything felt more real. The divorce was no longer just paperwork and awkward conversations with Stacy, it was heading for the courtroom. Stacy had been quiet since our last talk, avoiding me even more, like she knew the endgame was closing in. Kyle had gone completely silent, probably thinking he could hide behind his lawyer tricks. But I wasn't afraid of what was coming. I was ready. The days leading up to the hearing were tense, but I kept my focus on the kids. I didn't want them to feel the weight of what was going on between their mom and me. They didn't need to know how ugly things were behind the scenes. I kept things as normal as I could, helping them with school, playing games, making sure they felt safe. But the tension with Stacy was impossible to ignore. She tried once more to bring up the divorce, saying how she didn't want to fight, but I wasn't buying it. "If you didn't want to fight, you wouldn't have been lying to me for a year," I told her, keeping my voice steady. "You made your choice, Stacy." She didn't have a response to that. The reality was sinking in for her. She wasn't in control anymore, and she couldn't manipulate her way out of this. In the meantime, Donna and I were preparing. We went over everything, every detail, every piece of evidence. She was relentless, making sure we covered all the angles. "This case is solid," she reassured me again, flipping through her notes. "We'll make sure the court sees Stacy's affair for what it is." "And Kyle? He's just made it easier for us to show the judge where her priorities really are." I felt confident with Donna on my side. She wasn't just a lawyer, she was a fighter. We worked out the final details, and I knew the strategy. Full custody was the goal, and I wasn't backing down. Then, a couple of days before the hearing, I got a surprise. A text from Stacy's number. At first, I thought it was her, but when I opened it, I saw it wasn't. It was Kyle. "I think we should meet before the court date," the message read. "There's no need to let this get out of hand." I stared at the phone, my blood boiling. Kyle had the nerve to contact me directly now, after everything he'd done? He wanted to talk it over? This guy seriously thought he could smooth things over with some last-minute deal? It made me sick. I didn't reply. I wasn't interested in whatever game he was trying to play. The next time I saw Kyle, it would be in court, and I'd be ready. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of thinking he could control the outcome of this. The night before the hearing, I stayed up late, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, thinking about how far this had come. I'd gone from a clueless husband to a man fighting for his kids and his future. Stacy thought I'd fold. Kyle thought he could outsmart me. But now I had the upper hand, and it was time to make sure they both realized it. Tomorrow, everything would change. And I was ready for whatever came next. The morning of the court hearing, I woke up with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. The day was here, and I was ready. I wasn't going into this blind anymore. I had a plan, I had Donna by my side, and I had the evidence that would finally make Stacy and Kyle face the consequences of what they'd done. The drive to the courthouse was quiet. I barely said a word, my mind focused on the battle ahead. When I arrived, Donna was already there, going over her notes one last time. She greeted me with that same confidence I'd come to rely on. "Let's get this done," she said, and I nodded. No hesitation. I saw Stacy in the hallway, standing with her lawyer. She looked nervous, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, avoiding my eyes. Kyle wasn't there. Maybe he thought it was better to stay out of the picture, letting Stacy deal with the fallout alone. Typical. But it didn't matter. He didn't need to be in the room for me to take them both down. When the hearing began, it was all business. Stacy's lawyer went first, trying to paint her as the victim of a breakdown in communication between us, making it sound like the affair was just a symptom of a failing marriage. I sat there, listening to them spin the story, but I didn't react. I didn't need to. Then it was our turn. Donna stood up, calm and collected, and began laying out our case. The evidence was rock solid. GPS logs, the recordings, all of it. Stacy's affair wasn't just a mistake, it was a pattern of deceit, betrayal and reckless behavior. Donna highlighted how Stacy had been neglecting the kids, choosing her relationship with Kyle over her responsibilities as a mother. The judge listened closely, and I could see the shift in his expression as the truth started sinking in. Then Donna dropped the bombshell, the recordings. We played excerpts from the conversations between Stacy and Kyle, their voices clear as day, laughing about how they'd take me down in the divorce, how Stacy would get everything while I was left with nothing. Stacy's face went pale. She didn't see that coming. Her lawyer tried to object, but it was too late. The damage was done. The judge didn't waste much time after that. He saw through Stacy's lies, through her lawyer's attempts to spin the story in her favor. When it was all said and done, the decision was in my favor. Full custody of the kids. The relief hit me like a wave, but there was no celebration yet. Stacy looked like she had been hit by a truck, sitting there in stunned silence as the reality of what just happened sank in. I felt a small pang of sympathy. After all, she was still the mother of my children. But it passed quickly. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. As we left the courtroom, Donna gave me a firm handshake. "You did it," she said with a smile. "You got what you deserved." I nodded, finally feeling that weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about winning, it was about taking back control of my life. Kyle and Stacy had tried to destroy me, but in the end, they destroyed themselves. The battle in court was over, but the war wasn't entirely finished. There was still one more thing I needed to do to close this chapter for good, and that would involve Kyle. Walking out of the courthouse that day felt like a victory, but I knew it wasn't the end. I had full custody of the kids, and Stacy had lost the upper hand, but there was still Kyle. He had stayed out of the courtroom, probably thinking he could avoid the mess he helped create. But I wasn't about to let him off that easy. Kyle thought he could ruin my life and get away with it. He thought being a divorce lawyer meant he was untouchable, that he could manipulate the situation in his favor. What he didn't expect was me fighting back, And now, I had one last card to play. Donna had already prepared the groundwork for an alienation of affection lawsuit against Kyle. It wasn't just about the divorce anymore. He was the reason my marriage fell apart, and in some states, you can sue someone for that. It might not be a common move, but in this case, it was perfect. A few days after the court hearing, Donna and I met again to finalize the paperwork for the lawsuit. "This will hit him where it hurts," she said, her eyes sharp with determination. "Kyle won't see this coming." That same day, Kyle got served with the lawsuit. I wasn't there to see it, but I imagined the look on his face, how he probably thought the storm had passed, only to find out he was still in the middle of it. Later that evening, Stacy showed up at the house. She wasn't supposed to be there, but I let her in, mostly out of curiosity. She looked worn down, like she hadn't slept in days. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone cold but not harsh. She fidgeted with her hands, avoiding my eyes. "You filed a lawsuit against Kyle," she asked, her voice barely holding together. "Yeah," I said. "He's responsible for what happened. He's not walking away from this." Stacy sighed, like she was carrying the weight of everything on her shoulders now. "Timothy, I know what we did was wrong. I know I messed up. But this will ruin him." I couldn't help but feel a flash of anger. "You should have thought of that before you two started laughing about how you'd destroy me," I snapped. "Kyle deserves everything coming his way." She didn't argue. She just stood there, defeated, realizing that no amount of pleading could change what was about to happen. The alienation of affection lawsuit hit Kyle hard. His reputation took a blow, especially in his line of work. It wasn't just about the money, though that was a nice bonus. It was about making sure he felt the consequences of what he'd done. The legal fees, the court dates, the damage to his career, it all piled up. The months that followed were quieter. Stacy was granted visitation rights with the kids, but she kept her distance, knowing things were never going to go back to how they were. Kyle, on the other hand, faded into the background. He lost clients, and his name started to carry a stain it never had before. I wasn't proud of everything that had happened. There were no winners in a situation like this. But I was satisfied. I had protected my kids, my future, and made sure that neither Stacy nor Kyle walked away unscathed. And in the end, I had one final surprise waiting for me. After the lawsuit against Kyle, life started to settle into a new normal. The kids were adjusting well, and I focused on keeping things as stable as possible for them. Stacy had visitation rights, and while things were tense between us, we kept it civil for the sake of the kids. She wasn't the same woman I had married, and I had come to terms with that. I wasn't holding on to any false hope of reconciliation anymore. But through all of it, there was one constant: Donna. Over the months of working with her, I realized she wasn't just a great lawyer, she was someone I could trust. She had been there through the ugliest moments of my life, and while it started as strictly business, things started to change. It was subtle at first, lingering conversations after meetings, quick texts to check in, small gestures that felt more personal than professional. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was so focused on the divorce, on protecting my kids, on dealing with Kyle. But once the dust settled, I realized I was feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Donna had become more than just my lawyer, she had become a friend. And maybe, just maybe, something more. One evening, after everything had calmed down, Donna invited me to dinner. It wasn't about the case, not anymore. She wanted to celebrate the fact that I had come out the other side of the storm and was standing tall. That night, sitting across from her at a quiet restaurant, I realized how much had changed. I wasn't the broken man I had been when I first walked into her office. I was someone new, stronger, wiser. And Donna had played a huge role in helping me get there. As the evening went on, it became clear that this wasn't just a dinner between colleagues. The conversation flowed easily, laughter came naturally, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Stacy or Kyle or the divorce. I was thinking about Donna and how much I enjoyed just being with her. After dinner, as we stood outside, there was this moment, a quiet pause where neither of us said anything, but the air between us felt charged. Donna looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before, and before I knew it, I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't planned, but it felt right. And the way she kissed me back made it clear she felt the same way. From that moment on, things changed between us. We started spending more time together, outside of work, outside of the stress of the divorce. It was like I had found a piece of happiness again, something I never thought I'd feel after everything that had happened. Donna wasn't just someone who helped me through the hardest time of my life. She was becoming the person I wanted to build a future with. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward. Stacy was part of my past. Kyle? He was just a bad memory. But Donna? She was my future. And as the months went by, I knew I wanted her to be in my life for the long haul. Eventually, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to let fear or hesitation stop me. Donna had been with me through the worst, and now I wanted her by my side for the best. And that's when I decided to propose. The decision to propose to Donna felt right, but it wasn't something I rushed into. After everything I had been through with Stacy, I needed to be sure. Donna wasn't just some rebound. She had been there for me in ways I hadn't expected, and over time, I realized she wasn't just part of my healing, she was the next chapter in my life. For weeks, I planned how I wanted to do it. I wasn't looking for anything over the top or flashy. That wasn't us. We had built our relationship on something real, something strong, and I wanted the proposal to reflect that. One evening, after spending a quiet weekend with the kids, I knew it was time. Donna had become a steady presence in their lives too, and seeing how naturally she fit into our little world just reinforced what I already knew. I wanted her to be part of our family. I planned something simple, something meaningful. A picnic at a park near the house where we'd spent a lot of time together, just the two of us. It wasn't about making a big show, it was about creating a moment that felt like us. That afternoon, I set up the picnic while Donna was running a few errands. When she arrived, she was a little surprised, laughing as she saw the spread I'd set up. "What's all this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow, but there was a smile on her face. "Just something special," I said, trying to keep things casual, though my heart was racing. We sat down, ate, and talked like we always did. There was no rush, no sense of urgency. Just us, enjoying the moment. The sun started setting, casting a soft glow over everything, and that's when I knew it was time. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the small velvet box. Donna looked at me, her expression shifting as she realized what was happening. Her eyes widened, and for the first time since I'd met her, she seemed caught off guard. "Donna," I started, my voice steady but full of emotion, "you've been with me through the hardest part of my life. You stood by me when everything felt like it was falling apart, and you've become more than just someone I leaned on. You've become someone I can't imagine my life without." Her eyes softened, and I could see tears welling up as she realized what I was about to ask. "I love you, Donna. And I want you to be part of my future, not just for me, but for the kids too. We've been through so much together, and I know I can't do this life without you." I opened the box, revealing the ring I'd carefully picked out. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me, tears spilling over, and then she nodded, a bright smile breaking through as she whispered, "Yes. Yes, of course." I slipped the ring onto her finger, and we both laughed, a little overwhelmed by the moment. It wasn't some grand proposal like in the movies, but it was perfect. It was real. Just like us. After that, everything felt lighter. I had been through hell, but now I was finally stepping into something good, something I could believe in. Donna was my future, and with her by my side, I knew I could handle anything. The storm had passed, and I had found my way through to something better. Stacy and Kyle were part of the past, but Donna? She was my new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to move forward, together. After Donna said yes, everything felt different. Lighter. For so long, my life had been about surviving one blow after another. Stacy's betrayal, the divorce, the court battles. But now, I was finally thinking about the future again. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like the future was something to look forward to. The kids took to Donna naturally. They had gotten used to seeing her around, but when we told them about the engagement, I could see the excitement in their eyes. It was a relief, honestly, knowing they were happy about this next step. After all the tension and drama they had been through with Stacy, they deserved something good too. Life with Donna was everything I didn't know I needed. She brought a calmness to the house that hadn't been there before. We fell into an easy rhythm, her, me, and the kids. It wasn't perfect, of course. There were still bumps along the way. Stacy wasn't exactly thrilled when she found out about the engagement, and she made it known during one of her visits with the kids. She pulled me aside one afternoon when she came to pick them up. "You're really going to marry your lawyer?" she asked, her tone sharp, like she couldn't believe I had moved on. Yeah, I am, I said, keeping my voice steady. And the kids are happy about it, Stacy. That's all that matters. She scoffed, shaking her head. I guess it didn't take you long to replace me. That stung, but I didn't let her see it. You replaced yourself, I shot back, meeting her gaze. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. For a moment, I thought she was going to lash out, but instead, she just looked away, like she didn't have the energy to argue. Whatever, Timothy, she muttered. I hope it works out for you. It was the last real confrontation we had. Stacy knew she had lost the ability to control my life, and from that point on, she stuck to the visitation schedule, keeping things as civil as she could. I wasn't holding on to any bitterness anymore. I had let go of that when I decided to move forward with Donna. The months passed, and Donna and I started planning the wedding. Nothing big, just a small ceremony with close family and friends. We didn't need anything extravagant. We just wanted something that felt right for us and for the kids. On the day of the wedding, it hit me how far I had come. Standing there, watching Donna walk down the aisle, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. She looked beautiful, of course, but more than that, she looked like home. A real, safe place I could finally let myself rest in. When she reached me, we exchanged a look that said everything we needed to say. This wasn't just about getting married. It was about rebuilding a life together, after everything we had both been through. The ceremony was simple, just like we wanted. The kids stood by our side, smiling, happy, a part of this new beginning. It was perfect. No drama, no baggage, just a fresh start. After the wedding, we had a small reception in the backyard, surrounded by the people who had stuck by us through it all. There was laughter, dancing, and for the first time, I could see a future that wasn't weighed down by the past. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Donna and I sat on the porch, just the two of us, watching the stars. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I couldn't help but smile. I had been through hell, but somehow, I had come out the other side. I can't believe this is real, I whispered, looking down at her. She smiled softly. It's real, Timothy. And it's just the beginning. And she was right. This was just the start of something new, something good. With Donna by my side and the kids happy, I finally felt like I had found my way back to the life I deserved. The past was behind me, and the future? The future looked brighter than I ever thought it could. The weeks after the wedding felt like a dream, one I wasn't ready to wake up from. Life with Donna had a rhythm now, one that made sense. It wasn't rushed or chaotic like things had been with Stacy. It was calm, steady, and exactly what I needed. The kids adjusted well, even better than I expected. They loved having Donna around, and it felt like we were finally a real family. Not patched together, but whole. One afternoon, I was playing catch with the kids in the backyard when Donna came outside, smiling, watching us from the porch. It was such a simple moment, but it hit me hard. This was the life I had been fighting for all along. Not just freedom from the mess Stacy and Kyle had created, but the chance to build something better. And here it was, right in front of me. Stacy, on the other hand, had become more distant. The visits with the kids were still happening, but they felt different. I think she realized that the life she had chosen with Kyle wasn't the dream she thought it would be. I heard from mutual friends that things hadn't worked out between them, that Kyle's reputation had taken a serious hit after the lawsuit, and Stacy was left to pick up the pieces. I wasn't gloating about it, though. At that point, I didn't have the energy to care about what was happening in her world anymore. One weekend, during a drop-off, Stacy lingered for a moment longer than usual. I could see in her eyes that something was bothering her. Timothy, she said softly, as the kids ran inside. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I wasn't expecting that. For so long, I had been waiting for her to acknowledge what she had done, but now that the apology was here, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I appreciate that, Stacy, I said, keeping my voice steady. But it's too late for us. She nodded, her eyes drifting to the ground. I know. I didn't realize how much I was throwing away. There was a long pause. I could tell she was struggling with her own regret, but I wasn't going to let myself get pulled into her guilt. Not anymore. I had moved on. She needed to do the same. I hope you find your peace, Stacy, I said finally. She looked up at me, a sad smile on her face. I hope so too. After that, the drop-offs became strictly business. No more lingering conversations, no more tension. Just two people co-parenting their kids the best way they could. And that was fine with me. With Stacy fading into the background, my focus was on the future. Donna and I had plans. Big ones. We talked about moving into a bigger house, something with more space for the kids, something that felt like our own fresh start. We started looking at homes nearby, and as we walked through potential new places, I could feel the excitement building. It wasn't just about the house. It was about everything we were building together. Donna had become more than just a partner. She was my rock, the person who had helped me put my life back together piece by piece. And the kids? They were thriving. The chaos that used to fill our lives had been replaced by stability, by laughter, by weekends spent together as a family. They were happier, more secure. That's all I had ever wanted for them, and finally, I could give them that. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Donna and I sat on the couch, flipping through some brochures for new homes. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. "You ever think about how far we've come?" she asked quietly, her voice filled with warmth. "All the time," I said, smiling. "I never thought I'd get here, honestly." She tilted her head up, looking at me with those eyes that had seen me through the worst of it. "Well, you did. And now, it's time for the good stuff." I kissed her, feeling a surge of gratitude for everything we had. I had lost so much when Stacy betrayed me, but in the end, I had gained something better, someone who truly loved me, a real family, and a life I could finally be proud of. This was my new beginning. And with Donna by my side, I knew it was only going to get better from here. Life was moving fast, but in the best way possible. Donna and I were busy looking at homes, planning for the future, and making sure the kids felt every bit as excited about the changes as we were. The sense of stability that had started to settle in after the wedding only grew stronger. Every day felt like another step away from the chaos that had defined my life for so long. We finally found the house. It wasn't a mansion or anything flashy. It was a beautiful, spacious place in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where the kids could ride their bikes in the street, where we could have barbecues in the backyard, where we could put down real roots. The moment Donna and I stepped inside, we exchanged a look, and we both knew. This was it. Moving in was a blur of boxes, laughter, and excitement. The kids ran through the house, claiming their rooms, already imagining where their toys and posters would go. Donna and I spent the day unpacking, setting up the essentials, but that first night, we didn't worry about having everything perfect. We ordered pizza, sat on the living room floor surrounded by half-empty boxes, and just soaked it all in. "I can't believe this is real," Donna said, leaning against me. "It feels like a dream." "It's real," I said, wrapping my arm around her. "And it's ours." That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Donna and I sat out on the back porch, staring up at the stars. It was quiet, peaceful, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. For once, my mind wasn't racing with thoughts of court battles, betrayal, or what might go wrong next. It was calm, just like the night sky above us. "You've come a long way, Timothy," Donna said softly, breaking the silence. She looked at me with that familiar knowing smile, the one that always made me feel like she saw right through me. "I wouldn't be here without you," I admitted, my voice low. "I didn't think I'd ever have this again. Not after everything." "You deserve it," she said, squeezing my hand. "We both do." I kissed her then, a deep sense of gratitude filling me. Gratitude for her, for the life we were building, for the fact that I had survived everything that had been thrown my way. But as much as life had finally stabilized, there were still moments when the past crept back in. Stacy was still a part of our lives, through the kids. She showed up for her scheduled visits, always on time, always polite, but the tension between us was still there, hanging in the air like an unspoken truth. I could see it in her eyes, the regret, the what-ifs. But it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I had moved on. One weekend, she dropped the kids off, and just as she was about to leave, she paused, turning back to face me. "I've been thinking about everything," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "About what I did, and how it affected all of us." I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, watching her struggle to find the words. "I'm sorry, Timothy. Truly. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that." I took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "I appreciate that, Stacy. But it's too late to change what happened." She looked down, nodding as if she expected that response. "I know. I just wanted to say it." For a moment, there was silence between us. Not the tense, angry silence that had defined so many of our interactions before, but something different. Quieter. Almost peaceful. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, and I meant it. She gave me a faint smile before walking away, her figure disappearing down the driveway. It was the closest thing to closure we'd ever get, and for the first time, it felt like enough. Donna came out onto the porch after Stacy left, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Everything okay?" she asked softly, resting her chin on my shoulder. "Yeah," I said, exhaling deeply. "It's finally over." And it was. The chapter with Stacy, with Kyle, with all the pain and betrayal, that was done. I had spent so long fighting to get here, fighting to rebuild my life, that it almost didn't feel real that I had made it. But I had. Donna kissed my cheek, and we stood there for a while, watching the kids play in the backyard, their laughter filling the air. This was my life now, a house filled with love and happiness, a family that I had fought to protect, and a future that was finally mine to shape. As we stood there together, I couldn't help but smile. I had come out the other side of the storm, and what I found waiting for me was better than I ever could have imagined. This was my fresh start. And with Donna and the kids by my side, I knew that the best was yet to come.